The night didn't open with a scream. It opened with a shriek of bending metal, the kind automatic doors make when they're trying to warn you. They've seen something they weren't built to see. Under the blood-black Friday moon, the passing lot of Midnight Mart shimmered like a battlefield abandoned after some ancient, fluorescent-lit war. Shopping carts limped on 3 wheels. Half-crumpled receipts fluttered across asphalt like pale leaves that had lost their trees. And every shadow seemed to lean a little too far inward, as if the moon itself were pulling at the edges of the world. That was the first sign. The moon wasn't full. It was overfull, swollen with some kind of red hunger, like it had been saving all its light for tonight. You know how towns whisper about things, about sales so vicious they leave scars, about nights where humans forget themselves and tear each other apart over blenders and bargain bin dreams. Tonight wasn't one of those legends. Tonight was the thing those legends were trying to warn about. The moment he stepped out of the tree line, the wind stopped moving. A man-if man still fit him walked barefoot across cold concrete, leaving slight depressions in the frost. His clothes looked like they were losing the argument with his body. Hoodie stretched at the seams, sweatpants clinging for dear life. Every third step, he rolled his shoulders back, like something inside them was trying to break free. His eyes never left the moon, and the moon, for once, looked back. Inside the store, the crowd pulsed with desperation, breathing, sweating, snarling at sale signs pinned up like blood-red lures. The air was ripe with plastic fear and coupon ink that smelled like gasoline for human greed. But something else threaded through that atmosphere. Something older. Something that had walked forests long before shopping carts squeaked across. Tile Dottie crossed the threshold. The automatic doors shuddered violently, closing slower than they opened, almost reluctant, almost reverent. Someone muttered, "Dude looks rough." Someone else said, "Black Friday does that to people." No one realized their instincts were screaming the wrong warning. Our lights flickered in soft convulsions as he passed under them, one by one, like the store itself was bowing. A faint, rhythmic twitch teased the muscles along his jawline. He sniffed the air not as a man searching for deals, but as a night creature testing a territory. He was here for one thing, just one. A discounted weighted blanket the flyer promised would soothe nighttime anxiety. But the air tonight held a different kind of weight, because anyone watching him move between the aisles could tell he wasn't fighting crowds, he was fighting himself. The red moon carved its way through the skylights, painting trembling reflections across rows of air fryers and electric griddles stacked like sacrificial stones. Its light hooked into him, dragging at his shadow, distorting it until it stretched unnaturally behind him longer, wider, furred at the edges. A couple arguing over a flat screen paused, sensing something shift. The woman whispered, "Did the lights just dim?" The man said, "You're imagining it." People always say that right before something notices they're easy to catch. Somewhere deep in the store, a child whimpered. Somewhere closer, a shopping cart rolled backward on its own. Somewhere just behind him, something in his spine popped softly, like a knuckle cracking against destiny. He inhaled sharply, and the scent of warm bodies hit him. Adrenaline, cologne, microwavable meals, and the sweet copper tang of rising panic. His shoulders tightened, his nails already too long pressed against the fabric of his torn gloves. Red moonlight pulled at his feet, and for a moment, for a heartbeat, for a breath that tasted like fur and lightning, he wasn't sure if he had come to buy something, or if he had come to become something. If you feel something watching you under bright lights, it's already closer than you think. He turned into aisle 7, home goods, the place where soft things lived. Weighted blankets, pillows, comforters, comfort, sanctuary, shelter. But the moon had other plans, and tonight, comfort was going to bleed. Normal died quietly in Midnight Mart. Not with screams, not with shouts, just a slow unraveling of sense, like a thread being tugged from a sweater, until the whole thing slouches off your shoulders and you suddenly realize you're cold. Aisle 7 was supposed to be harmless, soft, the aisle where people came to forget the chaos, where they buried themselves in plush throws and fleece-lined promises. But shoppers passing the end cap slowed, their instincts prickling, not because they saw anything, but because something felt wrong, like stepping into a room where someone had just argued, or walked out crying, or left a window open in winter. A mother tugging her toddler whispered, "Come on, honey, let's check the toys next." The toddler didn't move. He just stared straight down aisle 7, thumb in mouth, eyes wide as saucers. "Mom," the man is bending. She didn't understand, didn't want to. No parent does when the child sees the thing. Adults have trained themselves to ignore, but the shoppers weren't the only ones feeling it. He felt it too. That man in the torn hoodie, that shape walking under the moon's invisible leash. He reached for a boxed weighted blanket, 12 pounds, lavender scented, stress relief edition, and as his fingers brushed the fabric, his hand jerked, spasming like something inside it wanted out. He hissed through his teeth, a quiet sound, too sharp for a throat built for human use. He pulled his hand back, flexed his fingers, flexed again. The glove seemed strained, little threads popping like tiny necks breaking. He muttered, "Not now, not here," as if logic had any sway over lunar law. Behind him, a couple entered the aisle, arguing over whether a comforter set counts as a real gift or just means you gave up. Their bickering was loud enough to be normal, grounding until the man in the hoodie turned his head slightly. Not all the way. Just enough for both voices to die in their throats like candles. Snuffed by a draft, the air changed. Heavy, tense, a pressure you feel behind your eyes when a storm is about to break. Something brushed the couple's ankles. Not a cart, not anything that should have been awake. A ripple of cold drifted across the tile, moving against the store's heating vents. The woman whispered, "Did you feel that?" "No," her partner said too quickly. "No, let's just go." Suspicion versus denial. The oldest dance. Humans, no. Even the store itself reacted. Fluorescent bulbs flickered with soft seizures overhead. Vent coughed dust. A clearance sign swung slightly, though no one passed it. Somewhere between the towels and electric-heated blankets, a low vibration hummed in the metal shelving. Not enough to rattle, but enough to warn, enough to whisper to anyone listening. He's losing it. Moonlight knifed through a skylight directly onto his back. His breath hitched, catching in his throat with a wet growl he tried to swallow. The sound bled into the shelves like an animal testing its cage. He gripped the shopping cart for balance. Metal bent under his fingers. More cracks in normal teenage. Employees stocking decorative pillows walked past the aisle, earbuds in, popping gum loudly. She didn't see him, didn't feel the shift. Didn't notice that her shadow stretched unnaturally long just for a moment, far longer than her body should allow. But she did notice one thing. A smell, something musky, wild, copper-touched. A scent like wet leaf normal died quietly in Midnight Mart. Not with screams, not with shouts, just a slow unraveling of sense, like a thread being tugged from a sweater, until the whole thing slouches off your shoulders and you suddenly realize you're cold. Aisle 7 was supposed to be harmless, soft. The aisle where people came to forget the chaos where they buried themselves in plush throws and fleece-lined promises. But shoppers passing the end cap slowed, their instincts prickling, not because they saw anything, but because something felt wrong, like stepping into a room where someone had just argued, or walked out crying, or left a window open in winter. A mother tugging her toddler whispered, "Come on, honey, let's check the toys next." The toddler didn't move. He just stared straight down aisle 7, thumb in mouth, eyes wide as saucers. "Mom," the man is bending. She didn't understand, didn't want to. No parent does when the child sees the thing. Adults have trained themselves to ignore, but the shoppers weren't the only ones feeling it. He felt it too. That man in the torn hoodie, that shape walking under the moon's invisible leash. He reached for a boxed weighted blanket, 12 pounds, lavender scented, stress relief edition, and as his fingers brushed the fabric, his hand jerked, spasming like something inside it wanted out. He hissed through his teeth, a quiet sound, too sharp for a throat built for human use. He pulled his hand back, flexed his fingers, flexed again. The glove seemed strained, little threads popping like tiny necks breaking. He muttered, "Not now, not here," as if logic had any sway over lunar law. Behind him, a couple entered the aisle, arguing over whether a comforter set counts as a real gift, or just means you gave up. Their bickering was loud enough to be normal, grounding until the man in the hoodie turned his head slightly. Not all the way. Just enough. Just enough for both voices to die in their throats like candles. Snuffed by a draft, the air changed, heavy, tense. A pressure you feel behind your eyes when a storm is about to break. Something brushed the couple's ankles. Not a cart, not anything that should have been awake. A ripple of cold drifted across the tile, moving against the store's heating vents. The woman whispered, "Did you feel that?" "No," her partner said too quickly. "No, let's just go." Suspicion versus denial. The oldest dance. Humans, no. Even the store itself reacted. Fluorescent bulbs flickered with soft seizures overhead. A vent coughed dust. A clearance sign swung slightly, though no one passed it. Somewhere between the towels and electric-heated blankets, a low vibration hummed in the metal shelving. Not enough to rattle, but enough to warn, enough to whisper to anyone listening. He's losing it. Moonlight knifed through a skylight directly onto his back. His breath hitched, catching in his throat with a wet growl he tried to swallow. The sound bled into the shelves like an animal testing its cage. He gripped the shopping cart for balance. Metal bent under his fingers. More cracks in normal daughter teenage. Employees stocking decorative pillows walked past the aisle, earbuds in, popping gum loudly. She didn't see him, didn't feel the shift. Didn't notice that her shadow stretched unnaturally long just for a moment, far longer than her body should allow. But she did notice one thing. A smell, something musky, wild, copper-touched. A scent like wet leaves and old soil and something breathing behind a log. She paused, pulled out one earbud, sniffed the air. Is there, like, a dog in here? No one answered. No one wanted to. He reached again for the weighted blanket, hand trembling, jaw tensing. His bones felt wrong in his skin, misaligned, restless. His heartbeat wasn't beating, it was pacing. The moon tugged harder. A pulse, a command, a reminder. His pupils thinned, just for a blink. Just long enough to notice, long enough for a watcher to realize something human was slipping. And someone did notice. An older man at the far end of the aisle froze mid-step. He'd worked night shifts for decades. He knew every flavor of trouble people carried into stores. After midnight, drunks, fighters, thieves, desperate parents, heartbreakers with melted mascara. But this wasn't any trouble he had a protocol for. He saw the twitching jaw, The collapsing posture, the way the man inhaled the air like a predator testing who it could pick off quietly. The old man stepped backward, pushing his cart slowly like retreating from a bear. He whispered, to no one in particular, "Moon's bad tonight. Real bad." And the moon seemed to agree, glowing hotter, redder, too full, too alive, too aware. The cracks in normal weren't cracks anymore. They were fault lines, and something primal was starting to push through. Yes, an old soil, and something breathing behind a log. She paused, pulled out one earbud, sniffed the air. Is there, like, a dog in here? No one answered. No one wanted to. He reached again for the weighted blanket, hand trembling, jaw tensing. His bones felt wrong in his skin, misaligned, restless. His heartbeat wasn't beating, it was pacing. The moon tugged harder. A pulse, a command, a reminder. His pupils thinned, just for a blink. Just long enough to notice, long enough for a watcher to realize something human was slipping. And someone did notice. An older man at the far end of the aisle froze mid-step. He'd worked night shifts for decades. He knew every flavor of trouble people carried into stores. After midnight, drunks, fighters, thieves, desperate parents, heartbreakers with melted mascara. But this wasn't any trouble he had a protocol for. He saw the twitching jaw, the collapsing posture, the way the man inhaled the air like a predator testing who it could pick off quietly. The old man stepped backward, pushing his cart slowly like retreating from a bear. He whispered, to no one in particular, "Moon's bad tonight. Real bad." And the moon seemed to agree, glowing hotter, redder, too full, too alive, too aware. The cracks in normal weren't cracks anymore. They were fault lines. And something primal was starting to push through. The moment reality finally snapped wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was a soft, wet sound, a part behind his ribs, a sigh of bone remembering its older shape. He staggered forward, one hand gripping the shelf of fleece throws as if trying to anchor himself to anything still human. But the shelf shook under his grip. A ripple ran through the stacked blankets like fur bristling along an animal's back. Someone near the aisle whispered, "Did the blankets just move?" No one answered, because the air itself was shifting, heavy, metallic, dense like the kind of night before lightning strikes the same place twice. He tried to breathe through it, in through the teeth that were already beginning to feel wrong in his mouth, out through lungs that tightened with the promise of something bigger. A low growl escaped him, barely audible, but enough to rattle the clearance sign above his head. The sound didn't echo. It vibrated the first direct symptom. He pressed his hands still gloved against his face, trying to steady himself, trying to force the moon's command back down into the human shape he wore like an old jacket. But aisle 7 didn't care. The moon didn't care. And now the crowd was starting to feel it. A young man recording TikToks in the next aisle stopped mid-joke. His camera kept rolling as he whispered to his friend, "Dude, something just growled." His friend laughed nervously, then fell silent when the growl came again, deeper, hungrier, a sound that didn't fit inside human lungs. He looked down at his hands. One glove had split, not torn, split, as if something inside wanted more room. A clawed one poked through the fabric. Black, curved, quiet as a secret, sharp as a first sin. He stared at it with a kind of horrified acceptance, the way someone looks at a relative who's finally come to collect a debt. "No, no," he whispered. But the moon didn't negotiate. Lights flickered, the floor vibrated. Weighted blankets on the shelves shifted like something beneath them had taken a breath. A middle-aged woman pushing a cart full of towels froze when the temperature dropped around her ankles. She looked down, A gust of cold air brushed past her skin, but there was no vent, no open freezer. No reason, she whispered. God help us. Her voice cracked, not out of fear, but recognition. Old fear, ancient fear. The kind people used to honor with wolfbane and locked doors. He took a step. The tile beneath him groaned. Not creaked, groaned, as if his weight was changing. Shoppers at the edge of the aisle began drifting away, slowly at first, then faster, like birds feeling the shadow of a hawk pass overhead. His breathing hitched. Shallow, rapid, wrong. Another hot behind his shoulder blades. Another bone sliding into a place evolution had abandoned centuries. Agoda he dropped the weighted blanket. It fell with a thud far too heavy for the box's size. Hey, teenage girl filming the madness, caught the moment on her phone, the way his silhouette stretched, the way his spine arched, the way the moonbeam through the skylight carved a silver stripe down his back like a brand. Then she caught her own reflection in the phone screen, eyes wide, mouth open, the light behind her shifting into something shaped like run. She breathed. She didn't shout it. She didn't have to. The aisle behind him bent into shadow, as if the moon had reached down through the skylight, wrapped invisible fingers around the man, and began pulling the wolf upward from inside him. His jaw cracked, a quiet, dreadful crack, the kind you hear when stepping on a thin branch in a silent forest. But this forest was made of clearance, stickers, and microwave popcorn. The transformation wasn't full. Not yet, but the symptoms were undeniable. Claws, breath, shape, shadow, instinct. Reality broke, and fear filled in the cracks. Shoppers fled, carts crashed, phones filmed, aisles became choke points of panic. But he didn't chase. Not yet. He just lifted his head slowly, painfully toward the skylight, toward the moon. The red light hit his eyes, and his pupils vanished into two molten yellow discs. If you feel the world shift, don't trust your eyes, trust your fear. Curiosity, reset, engaged. Moonlight sharpens, instinct wakes. Something ancient is almost free. There are moments in life where the world doesn't just tilt, it peels back. A thin layer of normalcy lifts, like wax warmed by a candle, revealing the older thing beneath, the thing with teeth. Aisle 7 hit that moment now. The transformation wasn't complete, but something ancient pushed through the man's skin, and the store felt it. The shelves, the lights, the people, even the moon, glaring through the skylight like a watchful god. He gripped the metal rack beside him, a simple home goods fixture meant to hold throw blankets and seasonal decor. It bent in his hand like clay dot, not because of strength, but because of purpose. He didn't want to lose himself, not here, not under these lights and these people and these cheap cardboard displays of artificial cheer. But the truth was crawling up his spine, a truth he'd spent years burying under normal routines, clocking in, clocking out, pretending the lunar calendar was just folklore, pretending the trembling in his bones was just anxiety, pretending iron-rich cravings could be fought off with protein bars and meditation apps. But the Redmoon, it forgives nothing. It remembers everything. A sharp sting flared across his back, clotted bones pushing under the skin, desperate to carve their rightful shape. He collapsed to one knee, hands braced on the tile. His breath fogged the air in short bursts, way too cold for the store's thermostat. A grandmother clutching a cart of discounted coffee makers whispered, "I've seen this before." Her voice trembled, not with fear but recognition. Law Hunter loot begins now. She stepped backward, eyes fixed on him, hand shaking as she pointed at the moonbeam hitting his spine. The red moon. Her voice cracked. It only shows every 13 years. and every time it does, something wakes. Her husband grabbed her arm. Don't say that. Not here, not now. But she wasn't speaking to him. She was speaking to the moon, and the moon was listening. A tremor rolled through the aisle. Weighted blankets toppled off shelves. A tower of decorative throw pillows collapsed like a soft, colorful avalanche. He snarled an involuntary sound, laced with pain, crackling like pine snapping in a fire. More cracks inside him, bones rearranging, teeth shifting against teeth, the sound of transformation starting not with violence, but with inevitability. The teenager filming whispered, "Oh God, oh God. This is like those cryptid videos, but real." Her camera zoomed in as his shoulder blades bulged, skin stretching too thin, fur pushing like grass through cracked earth. She whispered again, "He's changing." But the older woman corrected her. "No, child. He's remembering." The lore seeped in heavy, generational. A secret buried under this town's parking lots and polite smiles. A secret recorded only in breathless stories told behind locked doors. Stories about the first Redmoon, when the sky tore open and something lupin crawled out of the dark forest, followed shoppers home, and marked the unlucky with a single glance. The man had been avoiding that glance for years. Tonight, it finally caught him. He tried to speak, to say help, to say run, to say anything human, but what came out wasn't language. RRGHHH, a choked, guttural rumble, half-growl, half-dash plea. The old man who'd been watching from the end of the aisle took a step forward. He didn't run, didn't film, didn't scream. He just asked one question quietly, knowingly. "You hid the bite, didn't you?" The man froze. His transforming body shuddered, as if the truth itself carried weight. The old man nodded slowly. "My brother hid it too. The Redmoon took him, right in this store." Silence, heavy, electric. Even the shoppers who didn't understand the law felt the magnitude of those words. Some backed away, some clutched each other, some whispered prayers. A loud snap tore through the aisle. His spine arched violently. Fur erupted across his shoulders in a trembling wave. The shift was accelerating. He clamped a hand over his mouth, human fingers still, but claws beginning to push through his knuckles. Tears welled in his eyes, not from fear of becoming the beast, but from fear of doing it here, in front of strangers, in a place full of people who didn't deserve his hunger. If you ever feel something inside you stretching against your bones, don't pretend you don't know its name. Lights burst overhead, one, then two, then all along the aisle, popping like fireworks in reverse. Glass showered the tile. Emergency fluorescence kicked in, casting everything in cold, surgical blue. And in that light, his shadow shifted completely, elongating, widening, taking on lupine proportions no human silhouette should claim. The truth was out. The law was awake. The transformation had crossed the point of no return. And the moon? It glowed brighter, almost as if it was smiling. The shift didn't explode outward. It unfolded slow, dreadful, intimate, the way winter swallows autumn without ceremony. He fell against the metal shelving, one knee striking the tile hard enough to crack it. His breath hitched, then deepened, rolling out of him in thicker fog banks that didn't match the store's climate control. Shoppers had scattered to the far ends of home goods, hiding behind end caps, ducking behind carts, peering out like prey trapped inside a fluorescent maze. Someone whimpered near the bath mats. Someone else whispered a prayer muffled behind trembling fingers. Someone recorded from behind a stack of towels, their lens shaking uncontrollably. The aisle felt smaller now, tighter, like Midnight Mart itself was bracing for what it knew came next. His spine rose under his skin like a breaking wave. Each vertebra jutting, shifting, lifting, as if hands beneath his flesh were rearranging him with brutal precision. He gripped the floor, but his fingers couldn't stay fingers. They curled wrong, bent wrong. The gloves tore fully now, shredding as wicked. Midnight claws punched through. A howl escaped him, but not the full-throated, sky-splitting call of a beast. Not yet. This was smaller. A gasp of transformation, the sound of a man losing pieces of himself one breath at a time. The grandmother from earlier whispered, "It's choosing him. The moon's choosing him again." Her husband hissed, "We should have left. Should have left as soon as we felt it." But leaving wouldn't save them now. Predators remember pathways, even new ones. Another violent tremor shook his body. His jaw cracked sideways, then forward, then down. The sound was sickening, a wet dislocation, a hinge forced open by something older than cartilage. His hoodie split along the spine in one savage motion. Fabric curled back like peeled bark as fur surged beneath it, black and dense and shimmering under the cold blue emergency lights. Weighted blankets tumbled from shelves like surrendering soldiers. His silhouette was no longer human, not by any stretch, yet he fought it. Still holding on to some sliver of self, he slammed his fist half-hand, half-paw into the tile. The tile cracked deeper. The man's voice surfaced just for a second, raw, pleading. "Yes, someone, go." A young cashier across the aisle shook her head, eyes wide with terror. "No, you need help." But the old man yanked her arm. "Child, help can't reach him. He's past that line. The moon owns him now." Moonlight rippled across his shoulders. His muscles swelled, fur cascaded in uneven bursts. His ribcage broadened, bones rearranging with brutal intent, forcing his posture forward. He wasn't kneeling anymore. He was crouched, coiled, predatory. Each breath grew heavier, like a growl with heat behind it. When he rose slowly, painfully, the aisle lights flickered, then surrendered, casting him in a silhouette carved of shadow and red moonfire. A girl near the decorative rugs gasped, "He's huge," another shopper whispered. "No, he's not huge, he's still growing." Fear junkie loop triggered. A shopping cart drifted, metal squealing faintly as it rolled backward down the aisle, as if magnetized by his presence. He turned toward the sound, not with curiosity, with instinct. His ears half-shaped furling, twitched, his nostrils flared, pulling in the scent of sweat, fear, and cheap dish soap. His pupils thinned again, razor slits, gleaming like molten amber. Predator eyes. Then he inhaled deep, deep, slow, purposeful, the kind of inhale wolves make. When they lock onto the heartbeat they want most. A man hiding behind a stack of towels choked out a sob, not loud, barely audible. But werewolves don't hunt by hearing alone. They hunt by pulse, and his pulse responded like a tuning fork struck by fate. He snapped his head toward the sound, a whip-crack motion that sent a whole end cap of plush throws collapsing. The man behind the towels froze, every instinct in his body screaming, "Don't move." But instincts don't matter when a creature is already moving toward you. He stepped a single, heavy movement that rattled the candy display 5 aisles over. The store held its breath. The shoppers held theirs. Even the moon seemed to dim for a heartbeat. He leaned forward, muscles bulging, claws scraping tile, eyes fixed on the trembling man like prey pinned beneath a shadow. Then, in a moment, both horrifying and heartbreakingly human, his head jerked sideways, as if fighting someone inside his own skull. N-O, the word tore from him like it was dragged by barbed wire. He staggered, snarled, clawed at the air, clawed at his own chest, clawed at the moonlight itself. He wasn't hunting, not yet. He was breaking. If you ever feel yourself slipping, don't let the moon decide alone. His knees buckled, his body convulsed, fur rippled like flames, over-muscled, the final stage hovered just behind his skin, certain, unstoppable, hungry. The hunt hadn't begun, but the beast had. Asterisk, asterisk, there's a moment in every storm when the sky stops pretending it can hold itself together. A breath before the lightning, a tremble before the split, a silence too perfect to be natural. Midnight Mart hit that moment now. The air tightened, not warm, not cold, but charged, as if the moon were drawing a boundary line through the store and daring everything inside to cross it. He knelt, hunched forward, trembling under the strain of two shapes, fighting for dominance inside one's skin. His claws dug into the tile, carving trenches like an animal marking, territory with unconscious precision, half man, half wolf, but neither sustainable. His breath came in brutal, shuddering waves. Each exhale fogged the tile, each inhale rattled shelves. Shoppers hid behind displays and checkout counters, clutching strangers as if fear could be shared like warmth. The sound system overhead fizzed static, then died, leaving only the ragged, primal rhythm of his breathing. A teenager behind a rack of discount curtains whispered, He's going full werewolf, isn't he?" A grandmother answered, "No, child. He's going true werewolf. That's worse." His spine jerked upward, once, twice, like something was pulling him from above. Then the final vertebrae snapped into place with a wet, decisive crunch. He rose, slowly, deliberately, unapologetically. The shift hit him like a catastrophic revelation. His limbs lengthened, tendons tightening like cables. His shoulders widened into a silhouette that blocked the entire aisle. His face, once strained between forms, pushed forward into a long, formidable muzzle lined with new teeth that gleamed like forged steel in moonlight. Fur flooded across him in dark, rippling waves. He wasn't a man anymore, and he wasn't pretending. A full, monstrous howl tore from his throat as if it had been buried for a lifetime. The skylight above cracked under the pressure, a web of fractures spreading outward like frost. The moonlight intensified, pouring through the broken glass in raw, red shafts that struck him like a coronation. Several shoppers screamed. Some dropped to their knees. One passed out behind a display of scented candles. The werewolf turned his head, not wildly, not panicked, but with chilling focus. Predator focus. His nostrils widened. He inhaled the air as if tasting it. Behind the bath mats, a man whispered the wrong thing. "Please don't see me." But fear has a scent, and werewolves know it intimately. The beast pivoted toward that aisle, claws gouging long scars into the floor. He stepped once, twice, a third time. Each step shook entire shelves. The man behind the bath mats scrambled backward, knocking over a tower of rugs. The rugs fell like soft, useless shields. The beast crouched, preparing to pounce. People screamed. Someone threw a candle. It bounced off the werewolf's shoulder harmlessly, its lid clattering away. The cashier, the one who would later be called the Brave One, rose from behind a counter, holding only a barcode scanner like a talisman. "No, stop." Her voice cracked, but it carried. The werewolf froze, not because of the scanner, but because something deep, buried, stubbornly human recognized her tone. He turned his head toward her, amber eyes glowing, chest heaving, fur bristling like a storm-torn field. She stepped closer, 1 foot at a time, terror leaking off her like mist. But she didn't stop. "Look at me," she whispered. "Not them. Me." He did. The moonlight sharpened the edges of his silhouette, outlining him like a shadow of myth-made flesh. His growl deepened, not threatening, not hungry, conflicted. She raised the scanner slowly toward him. Her hand shook, her breathing trembled, but she held it steady like offering a relic in an ancient ritual. "You still know me," she said softly. "You still know yourself. Don't let the moon take everything." The store held its breath. The werewolf's chest rose and fell in unsteady rhythm. He looked at her, through her, past her. Something old in him fought. Something older in him urged surrender. He bent down not to strike, but to brace himself as if trying to restrain the beast with sheer force of will. His claws scraped sparks from the tile. His growl built into a roar. His body convulsed. And then he threw his head back in a single, primal scream. Raraha, the howl shattered the skylight completely. Glass rained down like cold stars. Moonlight poured in, unhindered. Under that blood-red blaze, he collapsed sideways, body trembling violently. He wasn't done, not broken, not saved. But something inside him had changed course. If the moon ever calls your bones, remember, resistance leaves deeper scars than surrender. The werewolf twitched, snarled, rose halfway again. The climax wasn't over. The consequence was only beginning. Silence after violence is never clean. It doesn't settle. It hangs like smoke without fire, like breath without lungs. Midnight Mart was frozen in that kind of silence now. Shattered skylight glass glittered across the tile like fallen constellations. Shelves leaned at strange angles, as if the store itself had been shaken awake and wasn't sure how to stand anymore. Weighted blankets lay across the floor like casualties, and the werewolf, the full, towering, impossible thing, knelt in the center of it all. Steam rose from his fur. His breath rolled in low, shaky huffs. His claws flexed involuntarily, scraping sparks whenever they brushed tile. He wasn't hunting. Not now. Not in this fragile pocket of calm between instincts. The brave cashier's small, trembling, impossibly. Steady took a slow step toward him. In the cold emergency lights, her face looked pale, almost ghostly, but her eyes still carried that human stubbornness that refuses to abandon someone even when you should. "Hey," she whispered. "You're not gone. Not all the way. Stay with me." The beast lifted his head. For the first time since the shift completed, something recognizable flickered in his gaze. A spark of the man who came here just to buy a weighted blanket. A man who didn't want to hurt anyone. A man who had been fighting transformation alone for far too long. He blinked once. Slowly, the grandmother from earlier crossed herself. "He's listening," she whispered, awe shaking her voice. "My God, he's fighting it." But the moon wasn't done. A new pulse cut through the store, a deep thrum, like distant thunder rolling through bone instead of sky. Amber light shimmered across the werewolf's body. His muscles tightened. His claws dug deeper into the floor. The cashier flinched, but didn't step back. His ears twitched sharply toward the shattered skylight. Toward the moon. The red moon hovered overhead like a watchful, ancient eye simmering with curiosity or hunger. It was hard to tell which. The cashier followed his gaze, feeling her throat tighten. "What is it?" she whispered. "What's up there?" The grandmother shook her head. "No, child. Not what. Who. Because something moved across the moon's surface. Just a flicker of shape. A ripple like a shadow walking across liquid fire. The werewolf snarled, not at the humans, not at the store at that. The cashier stepped closer, breath trembling. Hey, hey, look at me. Don't look at the moon. Stay down here. Stay with us. But the moonlight intensified, braiding itself through the cracks of the skylight frame, like fingers pulling threads tight. He rose, slowly, shaking, shoulders trembling under a weight that wasn't physical. The shoppers scrambled back, whimpering. The old man whispered, "It wasn't the blanket he came for. It was the moon. The Redmoon called him here." The cashier shook her head hard. No, he came here because he wanted help. He came here to stay human. But the werewolf suddenly jerked his head up, ears swiveling sharply, as if hearing a call no human throat could make. His entire body stiffened. In that moment, every instinct in the store screamed. Something else was outside. Something that had been waiting. Something that stepped onto the roof now, sending a shower of dust and loose insulation drifting down. A heavy thud echoed overhead, then another. The grandmother whispered, "Another one." Her voice cracked on the word. Or something worse. The cashier looked at the werewolf, re-looked, and saw the fear in his posture. The beast was afraid of what was coming. He snapped his head toward the front doors. Moonlight slithered through the cracks between them, a warning, an omen. He snarled, low, fierce, protective. Then, shocking everyone, he stepped in front of the humans, blocking them, shielding them. A role no one expected him to play, not even himself. The roof groaned again. Claws larger, claws scraped across the metal sheeting. The werewolf bared his teeth at the ceiling, a sound like war torn from his throat. The cashier whispered, "What's happening? What is that?" The grandmother answered quietly, "A Redmoon never calls just one wolf." Then the final twist struck like a knife. A sound drifted through the rafters, a howl so deep it vibrated the glass fragments on the floor. Not angry, not hungry, familiar. It was calling him by name. The werewolf's shoulders slumped. His breath hitched. Not because he recognized the sound, because he feared it. He turned his head once toward the cashier, a soft, almost human gesture, like an apology he couldn't voice. Then the roof above him splintered and something enormous landed on top of the shelves. A shadow, a shape, a wolf, but larger, older, marked by the red moon itself, symbols glowing faintly in its fur. The new wolf exhaled, fog rolling from its jaws like winter. It looked at the werewolf, not the humans. Him, and it spoke without words. "You shouldn't have tried to stay human," the cashier screamed. The lights flickered, the moon burned brighter, and the werewolf stepped forward toward it, not to fight, not to flee, to submit. Because the red moon hadn't cursed him. It had summoned him home. If you're still listening, the moon hasn't released you yet. Nights like this leave marks, sometimes on the skin, sometimes deeper. If you've ever heard a howl that didn't sound like it belonged to any dog or wolf you've known, tell your story below. Someone else might need the warning before the next moon rises. And if your windows ever glow red, don't stand too close. The sky pays attention on nights like that. Subscribe before the next full moon. There are more things shopping in the dark than we will ever admit in daylight.